Hey guys, Caitlin here. So let's talk about what we did in our class for CC Cycle 1, Week 2. As a reminder, I teach the 5 through 7, and so it's a group of Abecedarians and Apprentice kiddos. So here's what we do for new grammar. So the first thing was, well, we didn't go in this order, but this is the first thing in my lesson plan, so that's what I'm going to tell you. For timeline, we sang through the song and did the motions. We'd already gone over them in morning meetings, so they were already familiar with them. And then after we did that a couple times, I had these up on my board, and I let some of the kids come up and use my pointer to just point to each of the cards as we sang the song. For math, we did our mathercise. For the 3s, we did high knees, 3s. And then for the 4s, we did toe touches, like 4, touch the floor. So we did toe touches. After a little bit, they seemed a little tired of the toe touches. It is a lot to go through that so many times. So then I said, okay, just lay on the floor. And so for the last 2 cycles through the song, they just laid on the floor and sang them as well on then. For history, we kind of continued on the hand motions that we used from week 1. So, I said through the history, spoke through it and showed them the motions, and then we sang with the motions. So again, if you watch my week 1 video, the hand motions I use are very similar to several of the ones that I've seen online. There's like a bunch of very similar, but not exactly the same ones out there. And so what we did was for commandment number 6, thou shalt not murder. So 6 fingers, okay, because we're doing our fingers to match the number of the commandments, and held up one hand and then the one finger from the other hand. So 6 fingers, like pointed like this, like not murder. So it could be a gun or a knife or a staff or whatever, sword. Didn't really talk about that a lot, just use this motion. For 7, not commit adultery. There's a lot of variations of these, but what we did was we held up 5 fingers and 2 fingers. And so the 2 fingers were like people getting married. And then we pointed to the ring finger on the finger hand of 5. For not steal, we did 8 fingers and went like this with our 3 fingers and like grabbed them with our 5 fingers here. And then for 9, not bear false witness. I just really had a hard time with this one and picking one. And what I ended up doing in class was we just like covered our mouth like this and wiggled our fingers like this, like these were our neighbors. And then for number 10, I gave them 2 options and let them pick because I thought they were both cute. For not covet, we just took our 10 fingers and acted like we were grabbing, or took our 10 fingers and made them into binoculars and acted like we were looking for something that we wanted. And so I did both as we were singing and let the kids pick what they wanted to do. And then I had these cards again that were the commandments 6 through 10, and we put those up on the board, and the kids who hadn't gotten to use the pointer on the timeline cards got to come up and point to the history cards today. For geography, I didn't use a song. There is a CC Happy Mom song. She has songs for all the geography. I didn't use that today just because I didn't feel like I knew it well enough to teach it. So we just talked about it on the map, and then I gave them these little animals that they're all sea creatures that I found at Walmart. Since 4 of the 5 places were bodies of water, I felt like that would be appropriate. And so they each got one, and we just walked them around, moved them around from place to place several times. And then they used their dry erase marker and they traced them and then erased it. So that's how we got our repetitions in for that. For science, we did the agility ladder again. I just laid it out in the classroom, and they jumped through while we said our kingdoms of living things. So we did for science. For English, we used our hand motions that there's several videos, fast videos, slow videos. There's a stick figure paper that explains it. There's a written out version that explains it, but there's a lot of different ways you can learn those. But we did about, above, across, my arms are crossed, after, against. And these are, like I said, from other videos that other people have created, and that's what we'll be using. We did fine with week 1, and I'm saying we, like me. I have no idea how I'm going to learn all these hand motions for this song to teach it, especially as fast as the song goes once we get further on into the year. But anyway, we're going to give it a try. We're going to learn each one, each week, and it'll be good. I'll learn something new too. Okay, for Latin, we reviewed the song from last week and the hand motions, but then I had found these little finger puppet things. I don't know what they're called. When I was in elementary school, we called them cootie catchers, but it's folded the exact same way. But when you put your fingers in there, it's like a little lion's mouth, right? So cute. So we call these Latin lions. These were posted in the Tutor group, and they use these. This was very hard for my age group. Okay, so like I said, mine are 5 to 7 years old. Getting their little fingers in there, and then like just, it was hard. So I collected all of them, and we'll take them back next week, and we're gonna use them for Latin multiple times over the year. So hopefully it will get a little bit easier. If it doesn't, then we'll abandon this and move on to something else. This might be something for older kids. I definitely wouldn't do it with like the 4 and 5 year olds if you have that group. But I mean, it was cute. It was just really hard for them to get their tiny fingers in there. And I only had one mom helper today. So at that time when we were doing the Latin, and so the two of us were trying to help them get their little hands in there. So that was kind of, I mean, they enjoyed it. It just didn't go quite as smooth as I expected. Okay, for fine arts, we did mirror images, and I brought in some construction paper that I had cut out. One was a heart, one was just a square, and one was like a butterfly that I'd folded in half and cut out. And I showed those, and we talked about the different sides of them and the line of symmetry. I had this page this is from the trifold board printouts on CC Connected that are really popular. We use these at home, and so I had these where I printed them from past cycles. And so we talked about mirror image, symmetrical, and line of symmetry. Then what I did was I printed out each of their names in block letters and cut them out. So everybody's was different. They each had their own name, and I had them use a pencil and look at theirs and figure out which of their letters in their name was symmetrical. Like, could they draw a line of symmetry, and which of their letters were symmetrical? So then we talked about, like, did anybody have none? Did anybody have 1, 2, 3? We talked about that, and that was fun. I thought that was neat to use their own names. Then I had this little worksheet for them to practice with before we got into our main project, and also had this book, Mirror Mirror. This is like a poetry book. I didn't read any of it to them. We just looked at the picture on the cover. I know the light's hitting that, and we talked about, like, this is kind of like a line of symmetry and how it's very symmetrical. It's not exactly like one child pointed out her eyebrows are a little bit different. So it was a good discussion. And then there was another picture in this book, here it is, of Goldilocks. And again, you've got your line of symmetry, and it's different because there's the shadows, but you can see the silhouettes are like very, very similar. And so we discussed that a little bit as in our discussion about line of symmetry. For our project, we made Greek vases from the Inside the Lines website. So that's what mine looked like. This is what they looked like before. So I printed out the version that had a lot of dots for them to connect. There's versions with like only a few dots, and there's a version with no dots at all, depending on the age. For my age group, we did a lot of dots and helped them, use a ruler to do these parts and then connect the lines. And then she has some examples of Greek patterns that I hung up on the whiteboard so that they could make theirs, and that's what mine looks like. Then I also printed out this one that had Pharaoh's Lighthouse. I think this was shared in the Tutor group. We did not get to this, so I just gave it to them to take it home. But I always like to have more prepared than I need versus not enough and have time left to fill. So, and as I get further along in the year, I'll get more comfortable with the routine and kind of know what I need for things. But right now I'm just over preparing. Okay, for hands-on science, I just use the discussion guides that I've printed from CC Connected. There are several. I have them all linked on my blog, and we did that. There was nothing different or unusual from that. It was just what is in our guide and stuff. And then for review, we did Wiggle Worm. So I had these popsicle sticks. that each have a subject on them. That's history right there. And then 2 of them have worms on them. And I have them in this little container that I put painter's tape around so they can't see. And so they sat on the floor and I let them come one at a time and they would draw a stick. And so we would sing through or talk through whichever one that they drew and put it back in. No, I would put them, I'd put it back in until we'd gone through that subject twice, then I'd set it aside. If they got a wiggle worm, then they stood up and I told them to wiggle or dance, but mostly like the girls just hopped in a circle holding hands and the boys chased each other while we played the clip of the timeline song from this week. So that was what we did for week 2.